Serotonin syndrome. It's something that a lot of people seem to think that they have, but the majority of the time, these people don't actually have serotonin syndrome. The internet is full of information that can lead people to think that they have serotonin syndrome when they actually do not. Okay? I myself thought I had serotonin syndrome a long time ago when I first tried 5-HTP back in 2012. And the doctors laughed at me um, because, number one, first of all, I had a panic attack. It wasn't serotonin syndrome. But I thought it was serotonin syndrome because of what I read online. Doctors laughed at me when I told them that it was, like, oh shit, I got serotonin syndrome. Are you sure I don't have serotonin syndrome? And they were laughing at me. They told me that serotonin syndrome is a medical emergency. Okay, it can cause symptoms such as shivering, extremely high body temperature, muscle tremor, muscle twitching, increased pulse and heart rate, extremely high heart rate actually, to the point of just an absolute emergency. Okay, and then beyond that, it can even cause unresponsiveness, which is loss of consciousness, on the verge of coma, essentially. So as you can tell, if you actually ever in your life have serotonin syndrome, it's not something that is going to allow you to drive yourself to the emergency room. If you drove yourself to the emergency room and you thought you had serotonin syndrome, then you're probably just a hypochondriac who had a panic attack, and instead of understanding the simple reality that it was a panic attack, you blamed it on the 5-HTP or whatever else it might have been that you took. Because if you actually have serotonin syndrome, you're not going to be able to drive yourself to the hospital. Okay, that would be very risky. So yeah, it's a very serious issue. Also, it's a very serious condition, and if you have it, the doctor will tell you without a shadow of a doubt that that's what you have. You will know, though. You will know. So, what are some of the ways that you can actually obtain serotonin syndrome? What are the causes? Okay. Well, here's how serotonin syndrome happens. Okay. So first of all, what is serotonin syndrome? Essentially, it's when, for whatever reason, serotonin, either you have too much serotonin in the body at one time, or most commonly what happens is you're taking some kind of substance that inhibits the breakdown of serotonin, or the reuptake, okay? And so, like, serotonin reuptake inhibitors and MAOI drugs can generally cause serotonin to overload in the system, essentially. Stay in the system is a lot longer than it needs to. And then what happens is your body ends up with a abnormally high level of serotonin, and develops extreme side effects as a result. So, other things, okay, other precautions. So let's say you take a serotonin precursor, such as 5-HTP or tryptophan. And then you also take an MAOI inhibitor on the side. MAOI inhibitors, basically, they inhibit the enzyme that is responsible for breaking down and recycling neurotransmitters. So when you take a MAOI inhibitor, it stops serotonin, dopamine, and other neurotransmitters from being broken down, and it keeps them basically in the system longer. Okay, and this can be good, like, because we know that serotonin makes us feel good, and the more serotonin we have, or the longer that stays around, the longer we'll be happy. And so that's the theory behind MAOI inhibitors. The problem is, if you have abnormally high serotonin as it is, or let's say you take a precursor, 5-HTP, the building blocks of serotonin, and then you take an MAOI inhibitor, not only do you have this external serotonin from the 5-HTP supplement, but now you also have a condition where the enzyme required for breaking it down is inhibited. So now the precursor is adding more serotonin in the body than naturally possible, and the MAO inhibitor is keeping that unnatural serotonin in the body. So that's why usually they recommend people always express extreme cautions for things like St. John's wort and 5-HTP, yada yada. Okay, that's why you never mix pharmaceutical drugs with herbs, first of all. And second of all, you never mix pharmaceutical psychotropic drugs with herbs and amino acids, because this can cause extreme results, such as with serotoninogenic herbs and drugs and whatnot. It can cause serotonin syndrome. So, besides MAOI inhibitors, serotonin reuptake inhibitors, SSRI drugs, can also cause that in combination with other things. Okay, so in order for you to have serotonin syndrome, essentially, you either have to have a precursor to serotonin and either MAOI inhibitor or SSRI, or you can just combine an MAOI with a serotonin reuptake inhibitor. And that is a recipe for serotonin syndrome, usually. Now, of course, realistically speaking, generally the serotonin precursors, a lot of people seem to mix tryptophan or 5-HTP with MAOIs or serotonin reuptake inhibitors, and seem to be okay as long as they're at lower dosages. I would never suggest doing that. However, it does seem that serotonin syndrome usually only happens at extremely high dosages of these drugs and combinations. Regardless, though, you definitely want to be cautious, but you don't want to be a hypochondriac, okay? You cannot get serotonin syndrome from combining a precursor with another precursor. That is very unlikely to cause serotonin syndrome. Something like mixing an amino acid like 5-HTP or tryptophan with whey protein. Like, I got a comment from someone saying that they ended up in the hospital, in the emergency room. They're recovering from serotonin syndrome. Apparently they think that they cause serotonin syndrome by mixing whey protein and 5-HTP. To me, or to anyone who knows what the fuck serotonin syndrome is, that's just oh man, that's just hilarious. You're not going to cause serotonin syndrome from mixing 5-HTP and whey protein. Because if you did, I would have been put in the hospital a long fucking time ago, and I would have died of serotonin syndrome a long time ago, because for a long time while I was taking 5-HTP, I was taking in plenty of whey protein. At the same time as 5-HTP, no, because what happens is if you take whey protein with 5-HTP, it's more than likely not going to have any effect at all. The 5-HTP is probably going to just be, it's going to compete with absorption for the other amino acids in the whey protein, and more than likely the 5-HTP or tryptophan is just going to be, it's going to go through your digestive system as if you never consumed the amino acid in the first place. This is usually why they say to take 5-HTP and tryptophan and tyrosine on an empty stomach, and you should never combine it with food, because it's going to be a waste of money if you take tyrosine or 5-HTP with food, because you normally get serotonin from the protein you eat. But protein, first of all, protein is bonded, okay? Protein is basically a group of all the amino acids bonded together, and when you consume even whey protein, isolate, right? Your body still has to digest it before it can break it down to amino acids. No matter what type of whey protein or protein it is, it's protein because it's bounded amino acids, and your body has to digest the bond first and break it into amino acids before any of those amino acids, whether it's tryptophan to turn into serotonin, it has to break down the protein first, and then the amino acids can be absorbed. So that already strongly prevents any kind of serotonin syndrome from happening from that. Okay, and then beyond that, if it does break down, let's say that you eat a lot of tryptophan from protein, right? Your whey protein has a lot of tryptophan. Well, if you take 5-HTP along the side of it, I mean, the worst thing that can happen is, I mean, the effects are going to be negligible. How the fuck do you say that word? Whatever. They're not going to really be statistically significant. The amount of tryptophan you get from 2 scoops of whey protein, even if you have 40 grams of whey protein, each scoop is 20 grams. In that 40 grams of whey protein, not sure for exactly, but I think you might be getting like 2,000 milligrams of tryptophan max, something like that, if even that. And 2,000 milligrams of tryptophan is really not going to produce a whole lot of serotonin, okay? It's not going to be like a crazy effect where you can feel anything, first of all, or let alone have serotonin syndrome just from the tryptophan. And then if you add the 5-HTP, I mean, even if you take 400 milligrams of 5-HTP and you combine that with 2,000 milligrams of tryptophan, it's still not going to make a huge difference. I mean, well, the 5-HTP will make a huge difference, but the tryptophan from the whey protein is literally, it's nothing. It doesn't make any fucking sense at all. So if you think you had serotonin syndrome from whey protein, mixing it with 5-HTP, you should probably learn more about serotonin syndrome and how it happens, learn about serotonin, and how your body breaks down protein and amino acids and converts it into serotonin, because it's a lot more complex than that. So anyway, do your fucking research and don't kill yourself. Fucking leave your questions and comments down below, and I'll talk to you soon.